Well, we all know and have experienced how music elicits different emotions, right? Joy and sadness and sometimes agitation. It may relax us to sleep, or it can energize us and get us through the day, or it can even irritate us with that incessant booming from the car sitting next to us in traffic who has the bass turned way, way too loud and off-center. Well, this morning I'm going to share with you some things that maybe you don't know about the power of music. And I'll be playing with crystal bowls, and we're going to be doing a meditation with those as well. And some of you have had that experience, and some of you haven't, but I'll explain as we get into that. Music is why I arrived here in Wayfarers. I was talking to a lady earlier today, and I said, well, how long have you lived here? And she said, only 5 days. I said, well, it took me like almost 5 years to discover this place. And the vibration of this place and the acoustics are what drew me in initially and made me part of this community here. Because I walked in one day and I said, ooh, I want to play cello here. I could feel the vibration, and even in advance, it was very powerful for a musician. But did you know that music, when listening to music, our brain does certain things. It releases the good chemical dopamine. And that is a chemical that's essential for healthy functioning of the nervous system. And it has a lot to do with affecting our emotions and our perceptions and even our movement, our gait, things like that. Very powerful. I was researching recently some of the newer things about the power of music, and I learned that the University of Maryland Medical Center learned that blood flow increases significantly when people are listening to music that evokes joy or relaxation. And blood flow reduces significantly when music is played that evokes anxiety in someone. Of course, the nature of that music and what somebody perceives as giving anxiety versus relaxation might be different from a millennial to somebody like me. So it all depends. Even the Mayo Clinic now encourages listening to music before you go into heart surgery, because it reduces anxiety. They've also realized that it reduces the need sometimes for sedatives before knee surgery and colonoscopies and cardiac angiography. And it's also being used for pain control, because music therapy can effectively reduce even the perception of pain, and so much of the pain goes on in our heads as opposed to the location of the pain. And some in the medical world are even using a technique called vibroacoustic therapy. They use very low frequencies that are applied to a body that is suffering from things like Parkinson's and fibromyalgia and even depression. And the results are that the individual's body has less rigidity, and the steps they're able to take are bigger and a better walking speed. That's pretty incredible, low vibrations. One of the most amazing studies that I've read about recently came out of the neonatal intensive unit of the Beth Israel Medical Center. So imagine for a moment that you're a preemie. Maybe your gestation was only 35 weeks. That's amazing. And imagine for a moment that you're placed in this environment with constant beeps and whirls and hisses and murmurs and that energy of that machinery, and then the murmurs of people just wandering around and trying not to disturb things, all those pumps and voices and instruments, all dedicated to keeping you alive. But that's a pretty scary environment for anybody, but certainly for someone coming right out of the womb at that level. So they examined the effects of different types of music with over 270 neonatal infants. And some were told to listen to an ocean disc. This was an instrument that mimics the vibration and the sound of the ocean. And others listened to a thing called a gato box that simulated a two-toned heartbeat rhythm. Tone for the infant and the mother, right? And others listened to a lullaby that was sung by a parent. Interestingly, the effects. For those who listened to the lullaby, the heart rate of those babies slowed and the time they spent being quiet increased, and their alert time increased. Interesting effects. The babies who listened to the heartbeat rhythm that was matched to the baby's breath and the heartbeat, they were able to improve their sucking ability much quicker than babies who didn't. So that had a positive effect. And the babies that listened to the ocean, they slept better. And understand that you grow when you sleep. I think we've learned that as parents and people. So that was pretty incredible, and taught them to use music in these kinds of environments. Music therapy overall, and I've got some friends who've been in this business for years, is receiving a lot more attention by the medical community. And there are so many uses in this field. For patients receiving chemo, for instance, music is used to reduce anxiety and to quell nausea. It's used to restore speech in stroke victims because people learn to sing their thoughts when their left side of their brain is injured, because singing comes from the right side of the brain, right? Gabby Giffords, remember Representative Gabby Giffords who was shot? She learned to speak again by singing her first words, and she actually sang her first presentation that way to Congress. Music is used to help dementia patients recall memories. And a Harvard doctor that I've heard about, he introduced a friend who had Parkinson's. This was a personal situation here. His friend had Parkinson's, and he introduced him to a singing coach, thinking that that might be helpful in some way. Well, because the friend would find himself locked up, and that means he was unable to walk, he was unable to use his arms, they just lock up. But after some time with that singing teacher, he learned to burst out singing a few notes of an aria, and that would unlock his legs and allow him to move forward. That's the power of music, and that vibration in doing it. So when we ask you to sing in these Sunday mornings, sing it out, please. It's going to make you feel good. It seems like our modern medicine is kind of behind the times in all of this regard. You know, the Greeks, they have the god Apollo, and they put the god Apollo in charge of both healing and music because they knew that they were connected. And the Chinese character for medicine incorporates the character for music within that character as well. They knew something as well. When we look back at history of music and healing, there have been many, many cultures that have recognized the importance of music and sound in healing and in meditation. There were civilizations, for instance, in India, and the Orient, and Africa, and the Celts, and the Aboriginals, and the Native Americans. They've all used sound to heal and to achieve balance from within. The Tibetans still use the chimes and the bells and the singing bowls. They use this as the foundation of their spiritual practice. And they recognize that the body and the spirit are all connected, aren't they? In Indonesia, there is an instrument called the echoing gamelan, and then they use the gong and they drum, and they're used in ceremonies to both uplift and send messages to the spirits and the ancestors, and that's part of their healing. And the Australian Aborigines and the shamans in Greenland as well, in the Americas, use vocal toning and a repetitive sound vibration with instruments. And what this does is create from nature, because these instruments are from nature. They use it in sacred ceremony to correct imbalances in the body and in the spirit. And even the princes of ancient Egypt, the priests of ancient Egypt, they knew how to use these vowel sounds to resonate their energy centers or their chakras. And they understood that direct link between different parts of our body and specific sounds. I've found that music can be incredibly powerful in helping people recenter on a lot of different levels. At the same time, it's not a drug. We have different preferences and things ring true in different parts of our body because we're all different. There's no guarantee that a therapy is going to take a particular effect when it's taken. But for music to succeed in healing, what I've found and believe is that something a little bit mysterious and maybe even capricious and creative needs to happen. It's kind of almost an impulse that has to be released. Music can make us experience pain and grief more intensely, but it also can bring solace and consolation at the same time, right? Have you noticed that when music most affects us, when it most affects us, we engage our whole body, not just our ears. And when I'm going to explain what I'm talking about here, it means about we dance, or we see a live performance and we're interacting, we get that energetic feel with those who are performing. Or listening intently to someone, with someone that you love. I remember years ago, my son was I think he was 13 at the time, and he was listening to all kinds of music, but I had received this CD of great arias, great opera arias, the greatest. And I listened to it and I realized this is something to be shared. So I sat down at the piano bench and asked him to just give me 20 minutes of his time. And together we listened to this, and he's an opera fan to this day. You know, when he's gone different places around the world with his wife, they seek out great operas. It's interesting. I'm not a music therapist, but I've had some experience in incorporating music into some of my volunteer work. I've seen some amazing results. Many years ago, for example, a friend asked me to play at a birthday party, a children's birthday party. She said, "Can you provide some music?" And her son, Aiden, he was brain damaged from birth, and he couldn't do much. He couldn't walk. He was usually in a wheelchair, and maybe he could scootle and crawl a little bit. And I think Aiden was maybe 7 years old at the time. And the other guests were special ed kids from Aiden's school as well. And so I brought along a friend who played guitar, and his name is Michael. Michael was a very good guitarist, good like you, David, good like you, Chris, and some of the other musicians here. And Michael had just a strong heart, but he also had some problems. He had a lot of depression. He was bipolar, and he was a recovering alcoholic. Michael sat in a corner, and he played. And he was just playing, finger-picking through, and it was absolutely beautiful. And Aiden, who was sitting there with his mother, he made his way scooting across the floor. And he sat right up against Michael, and he put his ear right on the guitar. And as Michael played, and Michael just continued to finger-pick beautifully while he did this. And as he did, Aiden's eyes grew so wide, and a look of utter joy came on that little boy's face. And we all just sat and listened with tears coming down our eyes. And Michael's face was never the same. There was tears coming down his eyes as well. And you can imagine that a lot of musical healing happened that day. I also used to play occasionally at Hospice Atlanta when I lived down there. And one day I brought my cello, and I talked to the gals in the nursing unit. And I said, "Is there anybody there who could use a little music?" And they said, "Well, there's a lady down in 27B. She's been in a state of unconsciousness probably for at least a week or so more. But her daughter is there, and she's been sitting with her all this time. They might like it." So I walked down, and there was a young Hispanic woman, and her mother was laying there. And she said that her mother loved music, and she did too, but, you know, her mother hadn't responded in weeks. But she allowed me to play, and I sat with the cello, and I probably had played for 10, 15 minutes at the most, and I finally looked up, and there were tears coming down the mother's face. She wasn't as out of it as we thought. Tears coming down the daughter's face. And I just gently, after playing a little bit more, I left them to be because they were so connected with that. Amazing the power of that vibration. Fact is, we're all vibrating. Music is vibration, isn't it? Everything in the universe is in a state of vibration. And the frequency that an object or a person or even a body part most naturally vibrates, it's called resonance. The bones, the organs, the chakras in the body, I'll explain a little bit more about chakras in a minute, they all produce and have a different resonant frequency. And by frequency, for those who don't remember some of their early science classes, to explain, when a string vibrates back and forth 100 times a second, 100 times a second, that creates a vibration that can be measured in 100 hertz. And this would be its frequency. And a lower vibration, like with a cello, you get that lower tone. And a violin or a mandolin has higher, quicker vibrations, and so you get that higher tone. And that's what we perceive in our ears. Over 20 years ago, I was impressed with the power and the beauty and the tones of the quartz crystal bowls. This is what you see here. And I had an opportunity at that time to acquire 7 quartz crystal bowls, not balls, bowls, representing the vibration, representing the vibration of the 7 primary chakras. These are the energy centers in Eastern tradition and medicine that start with the lower chakras, the root coming up, solar plexus, to the heart, to the throat, to the third eye, and to the crown. And this starts with these sounds here. The lower root, solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. So these crystal bowl sounds and the music, because it truly is music that they emit, it's a very pure template of radiant energy because it's made of crystal. And this quartz crystal contains the full spectrum of light related to the energy centers. And as these crystal bowls are played, and I'll be playing them actually in a little bit, they emit this very pure tone that different parts of our body are going to resonate with. Because crystal acts as a thing called an oscillator that magnifies and helps transmit that sound. And that's why pure silicon crystal is used in our timepieces, in our best time watches, and the telecommunication systems, because of that ability. So the tone of each of these quartz crystal bowls produces this vibrational sound field in the wave patterns, and it resonates with different parts of our body. The chakras and the corresponding physical areas. And it is like a powerful radio transmitter in some ways, because it transmits energy from the atmosphere, and you can feel it. How many have heard these before? Yeah. Can you feel it in different parts of your body? Yeah, it's very powerful. And as I said, these are made of almost 99% quartz crystal. And the body is composed of crystalline substances. Our bodies and our cells contain silica. So there's this natural affinity with quartz. Now, how the bowls work when it comes to healing, and this goes back to understanding some of the things that modern medicine is finding out now with music and vibration. The rhythms of our body can be changed with sound. It's called entrainment. Some technical terms, entrainment. And that involves the ability of a more powerful rhythm vibration of one object to change the less powerful vibration of another object. And it causes them to synchronize. That's what entrainment does. So if I'm playing something very powerful, it changes the way maybe my own body is resonating. Through sound, it's possible to change the rhythms of our brain waves, as science is finding now, as well as our heartbeat and our respiration. And it can be these pure quartz crystal tones can affect our brain wave activity and kind of put us into a kind of a state of different consciousness even. There's been a lot of research done with the Tibetan metal bowls, and that's been recorded and shown that brain waves change with this. And I would suggest that the quartz crystal may be just more powerful than the metal bowls. Each one has its own frequency, its own sound, but it's alive with overtones. Listen to this one, for example. Today, we're going to be doing a meditation with the bowls, but they're often used for healing as well. So look at the body. Your body is a powerful instrument, just like an orchestra is a powerful instrument. And the orchestra is playing all together, and it's healthy, and it's sounding well, until somebody in the second violin section loses her sheet music, and she starts playing something a little bit different, maybe the wrong key or the wrong rhythm. And if that keeps on going, it's going to send the rest of the orchestra into disarray, isn't it? Well, I can tell you it is from personal experience. When an organ or a part of the body is not vibrating well, it's out of tune, it can have an effect on the rest of the body as well, and that's called disease. And when a body is in a healthy state, each cell and each organ is creating its own resonance in harmony with the rest of the body, their resonance, and that's good. Sound and light can break things up and dissolve and release blockages that can create a problem with a part of the body working correctly. And we all heard how a singer can break glass with usually her voice, and she matches that resonant frequency very powerfully of the glass, and then she crashes it. That's pretty powerful. But when using sound for healing or for meditation, bigger and louder isn't necessarily good, usually not, and it's not more effective. The use of sound and music to make changes in our body is not simply about physics and mechanics, the things that science likes to measure. It's also about a thing called intention. And that's where it brings us back to our unity lessons. I had to bring it back to this here. The intention of a person working with sound, whether it's your voice or a powerful instrument like the bowls, is as important as the frequency that's given. You can't measure intention, but you can really recognize it, I believe, and I've seen. I've listened, for example, and I'm going to bring this back to the practical world, to a classical piece played by an orchestra with a well-known conductor, and I'm aware of my heartbeat and my breath changing with that classical piece. And then I can listen to that same classical piece played with the same orchestra by a different conductor. And my pulse and my heartbeat may be different. My breathing may be different. Same musicians, same piece, but a different conductor. Now, how does that work? Well, let me suggest that the first conductor was somebody that the musicians and the classical community revered, they loved. He was in touch with the flow of the music, and he was a conduit for the music that he was conducting. The musicians responded, and the music made me strong. The second conductor was a rigid perfectionist, and he was somebody who inspired fear, and the musicians picked that up. His reputation and his ego were present wherever he went to conduct an orchestra, and it made me feel different. Now consider all of that magnified by the number of 75, which is usually about the number of people in the orchestra. And the intention really does change, doesn't it? And then how we feel changes. So going back to the bowls, keep that in mind, intention. Each bowl, as I said, has a different tone, and you might feel that tone in a different part of your body. For example, the root chakra, this first one here, you may or may not feel it down in the root of your body here. When I play the throat chakra, you may or may not feel that intense low vibration in your throat. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but that's the way your body was working. So close your eyes if you can and imagine different colors as you also play, because we understand that there are color vibrations as well. So close your eyes for just a minute and think about the color red, first of all, with the root chakra. about the color orange with the navel. The color yellow with the solar plexus. Imagine the color green with your heart. Imagine the color blue with your throat. The indigo of the third eye. And in your forehead. And imagine in your crown a white light. And now just listen to the silence for a second. So we're going to do about a 1-minute meditation on each of the chakras, and I'm going to start with the lower one. And I ask you to set your intention as you approach the meditation. My own intention, as the one playing them, is simply that our minds be set free to experience with openness and honesty whatever comes up and whatever the feelings are. Close your eyes and don't just hear the sound, but actively listen. Be conscious of your body and where you feel the vibration, where the body resonates, and whether the feeling is pleasant or unpleasant. If it's unpleasant, know that it's going to change in a moment. And as we move up through the chakras, and as I have the bowls sing for you, let the tones set your imaginations free, because the imagination is like a gateway to other dimensions. And combined with the crystal bowls, imagination and intention can move us into non-ordinary realms. And now listen to the sound of silence, the sound of the river, the sound of the birds, the sound of your heartbeat.